lads wine and cigars, and they gave the Germans bread. It turned out that one of the Germans had a camera. He told us to stand in a line and took a picture. Later, the photographer asked our lads to come and collect the photos.
Governments worried how to contain war weariness, prevent discontent growing mutinous, stop mutiny becoming revolution. And governments realized that turning this problem on its head offered a startling opportunity. What if unrest could be harnessed, reined in hard in your own country, but spurred on in the enemy's? In Kara and Dublin, Petrograd and Zurich, the Allies and Germans set agents working to exploit unrest and foment revolution. The glittering prize was to turn a whole people against its masters, taking it out of the war completely. In Russia, the Germans pulled it off, backing the Bolsheviks to hijack a spontaneous revolution. Russia in 1917 was war-weary. Huge losses, poor leadership and corruption, plus the nightmare logistics of a 900-mile front, left our army running on empty.
I don't know whether Russia's dream of destroying Germany will ever come true. Probably not. We have nothing to fight with. No rifles, no mortars, no explosives, no boots, no overcoats. Nothing.
But incredibly, Russia's army held the line. It was the home front that cracked first. Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, Russia's capital and industrial powerhouse, seethed with discontent. Its factories were swollen with workers, with little to eat and cramped housing. A demonstration on the 8th of March 1917 began peacefully.
It was a glorious, sunny, frosty day, and all the people were in an excellent mood. They were singing the Marseillaise and asking for bread.
But the Tsar ordered the protests crushed. On Znamenskaya Square, in the heart of Petrograd, the killing began. Sergeant Sergei Kapitchnikov was there.
The ensign ordered the bugler to play 3 signals. Then he commanded, "Rifles, ready, aim, fire." Everybody scattered. One man was down. A woman fell.
Over 50 civilians were shot dead. The massacre forced Petrograd soldiers to choose whom to defend, the people or the Tsar. Back in barracks, Sergei Kapitchnikov spoke to his comrades.
It would be better to die with honor than obey any further orders to shoot into the crowds. Our fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers and brides are begging for bread. Are we going to kill them?
They shot their duty officer dead and poured onto the streets, joining other mutineers and workers. British journalist Arthur Ransom cabled his office in London.
About 200 persons killed. Stop. Local police chief lying dead. Stop. Revolution definitely begun.
The troops gathered support at barracks and factories. They seized the city centre, set up barricades, occupied railway stations and the telephone exchange. Britain's military attaché, Sir Alfred Knox, was in the artillery administration when the building came under attack.
Outside came a great disorderly mass of soldiery. All were armed, and many had red flags fastened to their bayonets. Soon we heard the windows and door on the ground floor being broken in, and the sound of shots. Most of the officers were leaving the department by a back door.
In a matter of days, the Tsar's regime was spinning into freefall.
The revolution has begun. What happiness! The cursed autocracy is finally destroyed. The soldiers have gone onto the streets. The officers are hiding. It's all so unexpected, and everything's going at a gallop. We've all gone mad with joy.
Soldiers ordered into the city to restore control simply joined the mutiny. The Tsar was forced to abdicate, and a provisional government formed at the Taurida Palace. Russia's new rulers had their hands full running a war while riding a revolution. Germany looked to exploit the turmoil in Russia. And Russia's allies, Britain and France, crossed their fingers. They too had experienced worker discontent. March 1916. Londoners gather at Tower Hill to protest against conscription. There was also opposition in Scotland, inspired by the fiery speeches of trade union leader Willie Gallagher.
Thousands of our fellows have sacrificed their lives fighting against the very Prussianism they now propose to foist upon us here. Workers of the Clyde, you must prepare for action. When this loathsome enemy of freedom raises its head, you must strike, and strike to kill.
Workers marched down Whitehall for better wages and lower prices. Around 17 million working days were lost to strikes in Britain between 1915 and 1918. There were strikes by miners in South Wales, engineers in Coventry, Sheffield and Manchester, and shipbuilders on Teesside, Tyneside and the Clyde. The army kept 200,000 troops in Britain to guard against invasion and civilian uprising. But David Lloyd George, as Minister of Munitions and then Prime Minister, preferred to give in to strikers rather than crush them. Father of the state pension and national insurance schemes, Lloyd George commanded working-class support. He used concession, not confrontation, to maintain industrial output. Negotiators with the unions were given strict instructions.
If a strike appears to be inevitable, all the concessions asked for should be granted.
But while Britain kept a lid on unrest, France could not. Throughout the First World War, Paris lived under the shadow of German invasion. But after 3 winters of fighting, France's stability was being undermined by a wave of stoppages and protests. Many of the dissenters were women who couldn't be intimidated by the threat of military service.
Everybody is complaining in Paris. People are on strike over the price rises and the lack of fuel. Can't you just hear the rising strains of revolution?
These troubles are justified, because while the people work themselves to death to scrape a living, the bosses and big industrialists are growing fat in record time. And all we can do is grin and bear it.
These ideas did reach the front, but what pushed the French army towards mutiny in 1917 was a history of poorly planned and ill-conducted battles. The final straw was a doomed attack devised by its own commander-in-chief, General Robert Georges Nivelle.
The offensive alone can give victory. The defensive gives only defeat and shame.
On the 16th of April 1917, Nivelle ordered over 1 million Frenchmen to attack a heavily defended German-held ridge known as the Chemin des Dames. After storming this ridge, Nivelle expected his armies to smash through 7 miles of German defences.
We were faced by a forest of wire. Machine guns appeared everywhere. There were traps of every description. The ground was impassable.
"40,000 Frenchmen were killed in the first days, but Nivelle ordered the assault to continue. Casualties reached 150,000 by the 5th of May. Then the men snapped.
I am one of the most persistent in spreading propaganda. I know that I am risking my hide, but by this means I might save it. My darling, say with me, down with the war that separates us, and long live the revolution that in bringing peace will reunite us. I love you, and I don't want to die.
The village of Coeuvres, 20 miles south of the Chemin des Dames. The mayor watched what happened when the 370th Infantry Regiment was ordered to the front.
The soldiers spilled out into the whole village, screaming with rage, firing rifles and singing the Internationale. Towards morning, they formed columns and made their way to the woods.
By June 1917, half the French army was affected. Men refused to return to the trenches.
We seemed absolutely powerless. From every section of the front, news arrived of regiments refusing to man their trenches. The slightest German attack would have been enough to tumble down our house of cards and bring the enemy to Paris.
But the Germans had no inkling of the French mutiny. It was a massive intelligence failure. "4 days after their mutiny, the troops from Coeuvres gave themselves up at a nearby village.